Thanks everyone for tuning in. You're here with AboutShaw, and we're also here with a very special guest today, Greg Wilson. As many others out there in the music scene, we're all great fans of Greg Wilson and the music that he constantly brings to us as a DJ that has constantly reinvented himself. We're going to talk about a few themes today, and we'll underline each theme with a quick title at the start. So the first one is going to be around finding inspiration. So, Greg, you're known for an amazing record collection and an ability to unearth hidden gems. How do you continually find inspiration and find new music?
Well, I think, a lot of it is on a practical level that I'm out working as a DJ, I'm playing to, audiences all over the place, of different ages as well. My stock in trade really for these last 20 years has been a lot of re-edits, reworks of tracks, so drawing from the past, but wanting it done in a contemporary way so it can be mixed and everything, it can all be fluid. So it's like a lot of the stuff that I look to do is sometimes I'm inspired to, I want to play a track that would be difficult to play in a kind of modern context because it was with a live drummer, it's not properly in time and everything. So, like to have a version whereby I can now bring that back into play. So I'm kind of inspired by a lot of tracks in my youth really that, come to my mind and I think, oh wow, that was a great track, or it's a big track at the time, but somehow we never hear it anymore. It's just like missing, Sometimes it's an obvious track, it might be a track that was like a huge American disco hit, and it's never kind of heard nowadays. Whereas back then, when I was a younger DJ, I remember playing these things and the response, and I think that translates, a lot of the music that I've been able to draw from. It translates to a younger age group because, in essence, it's just good music. The quality of the music is there. It's tried and tested. It's seen the test of time. It's whether or not people can connect with it themselves. And younger people do all the time, because what the internet has opened up and enabled is if you hear a track, you like that track. Once upon a time, that might be a huge process of you trying to find it. If you didn't know the title, you might even have to go into a record shop and try and sing it, to see if they knew what it was. I've seen people search for months for tracks that they didn't have the title of, whereas now, you can Shazam it or whatever, and you can instantly know what it is. And then, in the comfort of your own home, you can explore the artist or explore the type of music that they were playing, and that is an incredible advance in one sense that we've had in terms of technology, is that there's a whole library of history, and how I see it is that's the heritage for a younger generation of people, and it's for them to do with it as they will. It's the same way that our generations took the music of the past and we twisted it to our own means and we made it relevant to us. And I think that's like more possible now than ever, because you speak to young people and there's a lot of contemporary music they like, but they're also talking about bands from the 70s or even 60s in certain cases and everything. So that's a very refreshing aspect.
What you've just said there, Greg, are intense nuggets of wisdom, and aspiring DJs and creatives will take from that what they may need to inspire them to not only pursue their day-to-day, but also what they need to pursue the creative side of their mindset. That's amazing. So the second theme is about how you built a unique sound. So your DJ sets, for me, when I've listened to them in the past, when I've been lucky enough to play alongside you at the University of Manchester, have always been a journey. What advice would you give to aspiring DJs, not only here in Manchester, but nationally, as you're a national name household name in music in the UK. What advice would you give those aspiring DJs?
Well, I think it's a difficult time to start off as a DJ in lots of ways, because we're in the social media era, and not only do people have to be DJs, they've got to be their own publicists in lots of respects. That's just the way it is, you know. I mean, it was always that way to a level. You did have to push yourself forward, but now it's a day-to-day social media kind of situation that people have to deal with. Parking that aside, the main thing obviously is the music that you're playing. That's the primary thing. And I think that you've got to know and believe in what you're wanting to play. You've got to make that decision and follow that. And what I'd say there is, you know, don't give up at the first hurdle. You know, don't expect it to all happen immediately and come together for you. And it takes its time, and it takes as long as it takes, you know, and you've just got to go with that flow until the timing's right. But, you know, a lot of people, they kind of take a direction and things aren't working out as quickly as they want, and then they start changing direction and coming away, and they start second guessing it all and seeing another DJ being successful who's playing a certain type of music. Should I play that type of music? You should get all that out of your mind. The music that you believe in, stay with it, go with it, believe in that. And you know, it might take longer than you think, but eventually it comes about. You know, if it's got the quality that you believe, its time will come. And so don't get off the boat before that time comes and miss it, you know, when you've been there at the start.
Again, nuggets of wisdom for people who are creatives to understand that their creativity may not succeed at the first hurdle. So the next theme is about overcoming creative blocks. We will all face creative blocks in our lifetime. And I'm a big believer of duality. It's about making sure that you have a good balance of day-to-day work, but also making sure you have a great time to be creative. How do you bounce back? And how do you get your creative juices flowing again?
I mean, it's difficult to describe because we all have like our own individual drives, and we don't quite know why, but we're pushed in certain directions in our life. You know, maybe it's your kind of conditioning from childhood, maybe it's the expectations of parents or whatever, or your peers, the people around you. But we're all basically, you know, different, and we're all coming from different places, and so we all have to find our ways and coping strategies of working through these situations. And sometimes, yeah, it is. I mean, deadlines are often the best help, to know you've got to do something at a certain time. So in the old days, if you were recording, studios, you had to go in a studio. There was no computers, you couldn't do it yourself. You had to pay money to go in a recording studio, and it was expensive, and you paid by the hour, and so you'd have a certain budget to go into that recording studio, and what you came out with was the finished product. You weren't going to be able to go back in again unless you forked up another massive wedge of money. And so you know, sorry, what was you saying?
No, everything you said is fantastic, Greg. I feel like our affinity for music is very strong.
Yeah.
And the words that you're giving now will inspire future generations.
Yeah. So I was saying about deadlines. So in that studio, you had to do it then. So it's the same if you're DJing, it's a deadline. You have to meet the deadline if you are playing between this time and that time, and you're expected to be on point, and you're expected to be able to, you know, play the music for the audience and connect with the audience as in your role as a DJ and everything. So that's a deadline in itself. So in other situations, if you're recording music, one of the big problems now is you have it in your computers, and that means that you can work forever on the same track, and that's not a good way about it, because by continually working on the same thing, you're just cleaning the whole thing out and you're losing the vibe. And so often when people went in the studios and they only had that one day, they came out with these amazing kind of mixes and tracks and everything, and they were vibe driven because they just had to get it done. And so I kind of give yourself personal deadlines and see where you get with that.
On that exact vein of thought, Greg, I'm a massive fan of a local Manchester band called Rough Trade.
Yeah.
They are trying to create reggae music for 2024. So they understand the quality that people like Damian Marley, King Tubby brought to reggae music in the 50s, 60s, 70s, yeah? David Rodigan, who you'll probably be very aware of,
yep,
is a champion of reggae music in the UK. But sometimes I feel like David Rodigan might be a little bit lost because his success has come from promoting music from the Caribbean, and I feel like following the windrush of people of Caribbean and Jamaican descent coming to the UK, we now have a wealth of diverse people in the UK that are also producing music of black heritage, of Caribbean heritage. But that's just, I guess, a thought from my head, and I'm not sure whether you agree or not, but due to the fantastic multicultural society we've got in the UK, is that the UK is probably one of the best places in the world to produce music of all genres. Mm-hmm. What do you think about that?
Well, music, within music there isn't discrimination apart from whether you're good or you're not good. The proof is in the pudding, and in black music that's always been the case. So people working in black music or working with historical kind of black music genres and stuff like that, if they happen to be white and they've done the kind of the genuine kind of approach to it, that they're not doing it from a cash-in aspect but from a sheer love, that's always been seen. It's like jazz musicians, obviously the black jazz musicians, but also a lot of white musicians came in and they mixed and they mingled and they played together, and this is the way it's always been. And music, cross-pollinates different. The Beatles come along, they worship rhythm and blues, black American music, but when they came along they took the music in their own direction, but they always paid their respects to what had gone before. The Stones with the blues, Zeppelin with the blues, all these things happened. And you could say there's a level of appropriation when the people who originate this don't benefit from that situation. But with, if an act is genuine, they wear their influences on their sleeves, So when in the 60s, for example, when all the British bands, the Beatles, the Stones, the Animals, the Kings, the Who, all these came over to America, they also basically brought the blues back. That America had forgotten its music, its history. It had been left in the past, and all of a sudden these young British white artists were saying, what's happened to these great blues artists from the past? Oh right, we've still got those. And a lot of people came back into play through that, and they would be eternally grateful that situation arose. So I think it feeds into itself, and I think that providing you're coming from a genuine place in your music and what you're trying to do, it doesn't matter at all where you're from and what you look like. It's what's coming from your heart in terms of the music that comes out of the speakers.
That's amazing, Greg. And you know what, yeah? I want to say a big shout out now to some of those blues artists that brought rhythm and blues to the UK. So I want to say a big shout out to B.B. King, James Brown, who toured here recently. Not so recently, should I say. His last tour was with the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
James Brown
supported.
He had a good time.
Mate, he supported the Red Hot Chili Peppers at the City of Manchester Stadium here.
That must have been a good while ago now, though.
It must have been, because unfortunately, he's not with us anymore. But the Red Hot Chili Peppers are here, and you know what, yeah? They embody that rock and roll and that funk, and that's probably why they chose him to support.
Exactly.
On that tour.
Well, they would have worshipped him. You know, it's like I saw this brilliant footage online of there was a band called Creedence Clearwater Revival, like the early '70s. They were a massive kind of rock band from the West Coast, and it was at the height of their fame. And they had Booker T and the MGs opening for them, who backed all the famous kind of Atlantic artists like Otis Redding, Wilson Pickett, Sam and Dave, just like amazing musicians. Did their own tracks, of course, Green Onion, we all know that.
What's your opinions on Isaac Hayes?
Oh, I mean, amazing. I mean, he links in with the same thing, Stax Records, which they were the house band for, and stuff like that. But, I mean, this footage is beautiful because as they're playing, the members of Creedence are side stage, and they're just looking at them with love and awe on their faces, at what they're seeing, because this is it. They brought their heroes in to play, and that would have been the same with Red Hot Chili. It would have been, can we get James Brown? And I mean, Black American music, going back to the blues, rhythm and blues, even like the jazz era and everything. It's all a kind of continuum that basically came into the '60s, and then we're getting the start of disco music or dance music as we know it, with Motown, with all those amazing Motown records that came out, and the kind of soul from Stax Atlantic. And then it moves on, and we, have funk and disco move forward. The electronics come into play. There's electro funk here, and out of that we've got house, we've got techno, hip hops coming through. So everything evolves from everything else, really.
That's amazing. And you know what? When you mentioned there about people looking from the sidelines and being really inspired, as a young DJ, I came across a video on YouTube of Basement Jaxx and Green Velvet playing in a club in Chicago. Now, I am a big admirer of house music, and you'll know yourself that house music was born not only out of Factory Records here in Manchester, but also out of Chicago and Detroit. And for me, my idols were Basement Jaxx, Green Velvet, Jamie Jones, and I saw in that video how house music was able to bring happiness to people in an area, Chicago and Detroit, where their core industry in automotive was dying.
Yeah.
Detroit, unfortunately, was a city that went bankrupt because the automotive industry disregarded it. But I guess we should quickly move on to our future theme, because I know we are pressed for time. We've got about 45 minutes, but I know you want to probably be down there and hear some tracks before you start. So let's talk very quickly about the future of music now. The music industry is constantly evolving. What excites you the most about the future of music and how DJs fit into this?
Well, I think with music, and especially when you get to a certain age, there's a lot of people who fall off the wagon basically and start to tell you, it's not the same as it used to be. And of course it's not the same as it used to be, but music now, there's still so much great stuff that the problem is wading through the sheer huge amounts of music to get to find the real treasures. In the past, that was already done by the record companies. You had to go and get a record deal before they put money into you to press your record up to get it on the radio. So the only time your music will be heard is when you've been through a whole process, like with a record company, with artists and repertoire, deciding when to sign you, how to, bring in a producer, all these things. Whereas
we're talking about the future of music and how do DJs fit into this?
Yeah, so what I'm saying is, like, music always evolves, and I think the greatest thing about music is just when you think you know everything, you've heard everything, all the tunes have been written, something comes along that absolutely blows out of the water and changes. And we haven't really had that shift. Normally, the last time it came really was in the 80s, and what came out of that, it's to do with the technology. Once the technology became, for electronic instruments, samplers, sequencers, all that changed music radically from a traditional 4-piece band of guitars, bass, drums, and a singer, to keyboards and samplers, sequencers, drum machines, all this. Now, what we've had in technology since is a downscale, and we can do things quicker. We can do things on our phone. So it's all become small, and we can do it in our pocket. We can put the studio in our pocket, basically. But that hasn't necessarily improved what we can do musically in this. And so sometimes the technology can get in the way. There can be too many things to distract you from what you're supposed to be doing. It's just the track, the song, that you're starting to worry too much about intricacies of what you're doing too early. Maybe you can do that at the end when you're mixing and stuff, but to let that get in the way too soon will just stifle your whole creative process.
Spending time with you here today, Greg, is giving me inspiration to return to music. Have you got any words of wisdom for returning artists to the music scene? So, like you, many of you may have taken a short break away from music to make sure that your life can potentially embody completeness. Have you got any advice for those looking to return to the industry and get back into music?
Well, I mean, if you kind of looking to do it basically because you enjoy it, that's a different thing from looking to do it to try to earn a living or anything from it. But let's take it as the former. So you just want to kind of come back in, make a few tracks. I mean, I think you should just, now is the time when you can do that. There's all the platforms where you can put your stuff up on, of course, and share it. Again, it's hard because you need to kind of promote that in your socials and everything. But really, if you're doing it for yourself, just do it. I mean, that's what's great about music anyway. Like proper musicians, they would just be playing music if they weren't earning a penny. They'd be on the street. They don't care. It's so overpowering, that urge to share. So. It's just in a different way. Coming back into it, you've got to, again, it's the same advice as you give to somebody who's starting off. You've got to be aware of what you want to do, the direction in which you want to go, and then you go for it. You don't like kind of change direction at the first kind of hurdle, really.
Well, Greg, the words that you shared with me today have not only inspired me, but I think when they go on to my social medias, they're going to inspire many people in Manchester, and hopefully that will resonate worldwide. Just lastly, I'm going to say a few quick special thanks. I want to say a massive thank you to Freight Island, who have managed to put on probably some of the greatest events Manchester will see during the bank holidays, and obviously they work very closely with the Warehouse project. I'm not sure if you've played there yourself.
Yeah, I've played many times.
But they are working very hard alongside Sasha Lord, who, if many people don't know, Sasha is the nighttime economy advisor to Manchester City Council. And I want to make a very special thank you to James Greenwood. And James Greenwood is also known as the owner of Semi-Skimmed Edits.
Yep.
And what he's doing in music in Manchester is showing that people can make music, people can be creative, and people can achieve their dreams. And I just want to say thank you again to yourself, Greg, because the words that you've shared today are going to go on to inspire many other people.
No worries, pleasure. Nice to see you.
Thanks, Greg.
Nice one.